Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 10th Annual Technology Showcase. This is a very special event presented by the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce in the City of Mountain View, and I'm Peter Katz, CEO of the Chamber. You know, it's no secret that tech in so many shapes, forms, and sizes thrives here in Mountain View, and we are proud to shine a light on them. Hopefully, you've been enjoying the breadth and diversity of our entrepreneurial spirit and inventive leadership, beginning with Wednesday's panel on AI and continuing with today's engaging exhibits. Could I have the next slide, please? There we go. The showcase would not be possible without the support of our sponsors. So please join me in thanking our signature sponsors, Google, LinkedIn, and Waymo, our partner sponsors, Intuit, Aurora, Neuro, Valley Water, the Mountain View Voice, the Silicon Valley Business Journal, and KMVT, who we are grateful for recording us tonight. And by the way, tell your friends, neighbors, and others who were going to come tonight, got caught in traffic or whatever, that they can see this on our website once we post it in about a week. Tonight, we bring our showcase to a close with an area of technology that everybody loves, aerospace. And yet, surprisingly, a large number of people don't know that some of the most recognized names in the industry have been operating at full speed for decades, not in Houston, not in DC, but right here. So we are proud tonight to talk about aerospace with our illustrious panel here. Next slide, please. Our moderator is Brian Kosinski, and many of you may know him as the Director of Leadership Mountain View for 3 amazing years. By the way, how many LMV grads do we have in the audience tonight? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, all of you talk to Jesse afterwards or Brian afterwards because it's an amazing program, and spoiler alert, one of the places we visit is NASA Ames. But Brian did have a life prior to LMV. He's an aerospace veteran with over 32 years of government and commercial satellite experience, including working on a national asset spacecraft program while in the U.S. Navy and serving as Vice President of Mission Assurance for Space Systems Loral, now Maxar Space Systems, and one of our panelists in Palo Alto. Brian remains a consultant for the aerospace industry. So, without further ado, please welcome Brian Kosinski.
Hi, everybody, and welcome. Boy, it's hard to see with those lights shining in your eyes. But I'm happy to be here. Like Peter said, Mountain View is just a hub of activity in the technical world and other industries as well. And you just don't know what you don't know, right? So hopefully tonight we're going to expose you to some real gems that are right here in our lovely city of Mountain View or in our backyard at Moffett or across the border into Palo Alto. It's just that this area, considering the Silicon Valley, really has done tremendous work that affect each and every one's lives every day. And I think you'll pick up on some of that as we go through the night and hear the presentations. So I just want to give you a little bit of the lay of the land before we start. I'm going to ask each panel member just to say their name and the company that they're from, company or institution, so that you can kind of get the lay of the land of who they are. We'll save the introductions when they actually come up to do their presentations. Each panel member will have 10 minutes to either show slides, video, or just discussion about what they are and what they do. And then I'll get the creative juices going by asking a couple questions to each of the panel members. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. And Peter will be the timekeeper to keep us honest here tonight. So if you would, let's start with Clem on the left, and if you could just name and who you work for.
My name is Clem Tillier, and I work for Lockheed Martin Space in Palo Alto, just across the border.
My name is Derek DeFries. I am from the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears.
My name is Hampton Chan, and I'm from Maxar Space Systems, located in Palo Alto.
And I'm Ryszard Pisarski, or Richard. I work for NASA Ames right here in Mountain View.
All right, so thank you all for coming. I know you are all super busy folks, so we appreciate your time and effort to help us out here tonight with this panel. So the first speaker will have, again, 10 minutes to discuss what they work for and who they work for and what they do. Hopefully I'll get some really creative juices going because you're going to see just a wide range of things. So in case you didn't notice, we have two companies, i.e. Lockheed and Aerospace Systems, but then we have an educational institution and we also have NASA government agency, obviously. So it's going to be a diverse panel. You'll hear about technology development from many different angles, which I think will make tonight a lot better than if we just had commercial companies speaking. So Clem, as he mentioned, works for Lockheed Martin Space. Clem is a principal physicist at Lockheed Martin, based in the Advanced Technology Center in Palo Alto. For 2 decades, he has worked on various space sensor instruments, collaborating with teams on the design, build, test, deployment, and operation of exquisite cameras that capture spectacular images of the sun, the earth, and the stars. Pretty important stuff. So Clem, if you would want to come up to the panel, and if we could have the next slide queued up.
Thanks for having me here in Mountain View. So as Brian mentioned, I represent Lockheed Martin. We are a very large company that makes a lot of different things, but the specific slice of it that I'd like to talk to you about is the space activity that we have here in the Bay Area. We have a large campus. You may have seen it on the other side of Buffett Field in Sunnyvale. There's several thousand employees there. And then we also have a smaller research lab tucked away near Stanford in Palo Alto, where I work, along with about 500 other engineers and scientists. And what we do up there is not too mysterious. It's research and development. So we really are pushing the next generation of technologies and trying to develop instruments and sensors that can support the questions that scientists pose to us. In fact, we do have scientists under our roof. You wouldn't think of scientists working at Lockheed Martin, but they do. And in particular, we have a group of solar researchers in heliophysics who are deeply embedded with our engineers, right? So we cross the two streams of science and technology development, payload development, to advance the frontiers of science. So, while none of this is in Mountain View, it's just over the border. And I would say that if you take the center of gravity of our Buffett Field operation and our Palo Alto operation, that center of gravity is squarely in Mountain View. Many of our employees live in Mountain View, recreate in Mountain View. We are frequent visitors to Castro Street, of course. And so I want to tell you a little bit about what we've done over the years in Palo Alto. We've been in the location since the 1950s. There's old aerial photographs of the area where you see our buildings surrounded by cars with chrome and big fins. And the entire surrounding area is just rolling golden hills with large oak trees. And now it's completely built out as a big office park, Stanford Research Park. But interestingly enough, you can find the oak trees. They're still around. They're hundreds of years old. So I want to do a quick show of hands. Who has seen the photo that's up on the screen? Have you seen it before? Yeah, it looks like a good portion of the folks in this room have seen this photo before. It was acquired by the James Webb Space Telescope. It shows the Carina Nebula, a region of that known as the Cosmic Cliffs. It's a star-forming region where you have these giant clouds of interstellar dust that are gravitationally collapsing and igniting new stars. It's a star nursery. And the camera that acquired this image was built by our group in Palo Alto, so at the Advanced Technology Center. So Obviously, the James Webb Space Telescope is a very, very large and complicated undertaking. It has many, many parts. I don't want to exaggerate by saying the whole thing was done in Palo Alto. We are talking here about the heart of the system, the camera instrument that has the focal planes and filter wheels. And what's amazing about it is it operates at 35 degrees above absolute zero. It has to be super cold, colder than liquid nitrogen, so that it can image colors of light, so wavelengths, in the infrared, where if it were warmer, it would glow in those colors. So the self-radiation, if you had it any hotter, would quickly drown out any of the signal from the stars. So it has to be cool to these incredible temperatures. To test it, we put it in a vacuum chamber to simulate the environment of space. And of course, normally you cool these chambers with liquid nitrogen to make the walls very, very cold. In this case, liquid nitrogen is too warm, so we had to use liquid helium, which is harder to come by, and it's a harder test to run. This is just one example of the things we do. We have a long story and a long development track record of space payloads in earth science, astronomy, as you see here, and weather and heliophysics. If you've seen spectacular images of solar eruptions, coronal mass ejection solar flares, it's more likely than not that the cameras that acquired those images and videos were built by our group in Palo Alto. And I think I will wrap up here and leave as much time as possible for Q&A. Thank you.
I think myself and all the panel members probably have a feeling that we work really, really hard in this industry. Sometimes you go into work on Monday morning, you work your butt off, you go home on Friday, and you feel like you're further behind than you started on Monday morning. So to see the fruits of your labor is really an interesting aspect of this, this world that we live in. I'm remembering that the first satellite that I worked on when I left the Navy and started working at Space Systems Loral, which is now Maxar Space System, was a GOES weather satellite. And it was the first satellite that had enough power and enough imaging technology that we could take pictures of the Earth and specifically storm systems and then string them together as a video. We couldn't actually take video at the time, but we could take the pictures rapidly enough to run them as a video. And we had scientists from NOAA come in, and I can't tell you how many hours I worked on this satellite, and I didn't think the imager was going to work, so somehow it did. But these guys from NOAA came in, and they were so excited about the data they were getting. And the one guy said, you know, we see this cloud exploding upwards, and we didn't know that could happen, and we don't know what it means, but we're going to figure it out. And that's what's happening with James Webb right now. Every day there are people doing new science, new discoveries on what the James Webb is able to image. So thank you very much for that presentation. Okay, our next speaker is David DeVries from Berkeley Space Center. David is a Regent Emeritus at the University of California and an attorney with over 25 years of capital market experience. David is UC Berkeley's lead representative for the Berkeley Space Center, which is launching a new innovation and research park at NASA Ames on Moffett Field. So how many people knew that we were going to have a new research place at NASA Ames? A few of you. Pretty exciting stuff. The center will further the pursuit of frontier and deep technology research in aerospace, aviation, quantum computing, data, AI, and other disciplines. So please welcome David to the stage.
I'm going to take this mic because I think it's a little bit better to stand. Actually, David is my much better looking brother. I am Derek. And I actually have a twin named Darren. So you can imagine how confusing our house was. Derek, Darren, David, Douglas, dummy. We answer everything. Yes, my name is Derek DeVries. I am from the University of California, Berkeley. We are building 2 million square feet of research and development space at NASA Ames. And I have a few slides to show you. Let me go ahead and turn to the first one, if that's okay. Keep going. The pretty shot was supposed to be later, but that's all right. Okay, here we are. Everybody recognizes this. This is satellite imagery from, I forgot to start my little 10-minute clock. Let me go ahead and do that so that you don't hear me drone on beyond what I should. 47 miles away is the University of California, Berkeley, Golden Bears. Down here at the bottom, NASA Ames, and you can see as the images go forward, let me go ahead and, next slide, please. You can see we're starting to zone in on this realm, Mountain View and surrounding areas. But the point of this slide is to point out all the deep technology companies around here. And a lot of you say, where is the heart of Silicon Valley? The heart of Silicon Valley, the geographic center of Silicon Valley is actually NASA Ames. If you planted a flag on Meta, the Apple Ring, the HP garage, where Silicon Valley is alleged to have started, you really wouldn't know or be able to say that that is the heart of Silicon Valley. Heart of Silicon Valley is NASA Ames, and it's right there in the center. And of course, here's the Berkeley parcel of land that we were building on, the blue and gold, naturally. Next slide, please. This is NASA Ames. And I don't want to steal any thunder from my colleague here, but 3,000 scientists, right, at NASA Ames. And a lot of them also from the US Geological Survey are joining them on that site. This is a hidden gem of the 10-campus system of NASA in general, one of the really strong research centers, and with whom the University of California system, not just UC Berkeley, has a really deep and embedded relationship with. We receive tremendous amount of funding and we collaborate on all sorts of research topics. Little did people know that UC Berkeley is already conducting mission operations in outer space. We're affiliated with Jeff Bezos and the Escapade mission, going to study the Mars solar array. We are launching other mission satellites from the Space Sciences Laboratory on campus. The aerospace major at UC Berkeley, when it didn't even exist, was number 14 in the country. Ponder that. So the aerospace engineering degree is now in its third year. We have just incredible students who are engaged in that discipline. They represent the top 4% of the engineering students at Berkeley. And if you can imagine, the engineering students at Berkeley are already probably in the top 1% of the nation. So we are getting the cream of the crop to focus on new technology and space technologies. And what we're gonna do here is build 2 million square feet. Now, to think about what that means, that's 2 Salesforce towers. 2, chopped up in half and gently laid around the ground across 36 acres. And that is going to be also an incredible site filled with private industry. But if you don't believe me, I've got a video, and I'm gonna ask our sound engineer not to play the sound because there's a voice of God over it, and I'd rather you hear my voice as the God as opposed to the other God, especially if you're, believing in multiple gods. So if we can play the video, I think that's the next one. If not, then I'm gonna have to correct myself. Oh, okay, I have to correct myself. So this is the center that we're building. Do you see the parts on the right? We're a stone's throw away from Hangar 1. Well, I can't really throw very well, but somebody strong can throw something and hit Hangar 1. I don't recommend it. It's been reclad. It's just gorgeous. It represents the old Hangar 1 of the day. It's just an incredibly beautiful building, and it represents 1 million cubic square feet of space. That's massive. That is more indoor space than any other structure in the United States. It's huge, and we're gonna be right next to it. So we're building all those white buildings right there. So it's a massive campus, and we're targeting about 20% will be the university, but almost the rest of the space will have university affiliates in it. So private industry who work with and want to work with NASA and with the University of California system. We've already mentioned the disciplines that we're gonna be doing there, like aerospace, makes sense, advanced aviation, makes sense, but also quantum and high performance computing, astrobiology, space health. How do we keep people alive when they're going to Mars? How do we keep them alive when they're on Mars? How do we bring them back? How do we actually 3D print in gravity and space? So those are the topics of deep interest to us, but really what this is about is creating an innovation ecosystem at NASA Ames. Now it's the video? Maybe? Yes, go ahead, play the video. All right, so I pretty much told you all of this, but let me give you a better representation of where we are on our beautiful planet. Again, that's 47 miles. From UC Berkeley, it's 47 minutes or 4 hours, however you like to drive. It took me only an hour and a half to get here today, so pretty happy about that. That's a good day. This is the historical Shenandoah Plaza, and as you orientate on the site, just remember this is a sort of barren right now. There's nothing there. There's no structures. There's no beauty. There's no sense of community. So what we're building is this incredible space that is all focused on these really deep tech disciplines where you can bring in government, like NASA, Berkeley, academia, and private industry to work on the world's toughest problems, not just the world's, all the planets in the solar systems and the galaxies problems, right? So this structure will also include, or this research center will also include a conference facility, 300 units of housing, what we call a short-term stay, some of you might call it a hotel, but really this opportunity to bring in people and members of the public for educational programming, events, things like that. Oh, this golden bear, by the way, 16 feet tall. So we're planning in this, 7 miles away from your backyard, Stanford. Gotcha. This is a solar array. There's enough energy that is produced by this solar array to run all of the exterior lighting for the entire property. But more than that, that's the money shot. You can see Hangar 1. You can be inspired by the history of NASA Ames as well as the promise of what can be at the Berkeley Space Center. So, yay. I want to get a clap for that. Go Bears for that. All right. Thank you very much. If we could go to the next slide then. This is really what we're building. And if you put all sorts of private industry together, like the legacy companies like Lockheed Martin, with the new companies like Space Kinetic and Squishy Robotics, really small startups that are taking bespoke technologies that might be developed at NASA or at the UC system, you put them up there in a proverbial soup of companies, you mix it with the intellectual and the research talent that is done at a great university like Cal, along with the resources and the talent that is at NASA. These are the outcomes you get. You get new technology, you get collaborative research, and you get your faculty, science, and students engaged on creating and working on all of these problems. And you get lots of public benefits. So I think this, if I can ask for the next slide. All right, so this is what convinced the UC Regents to approve my crazy plan. This is what happens. First of all, this is a real estate opportunity. We are developing real estate. We are going to be renting out to private industry, and there is going to be a revenue stream for the university and for NASA that will actually be poured back into the site. One of the most important things to do about this, no public monies are being spent to build this. A lot of people have been mistaken about the use of government funding. This is a private venture using public people to create opportunities to spit it back into public good. So very important. You're asking, well, why are they spending money on this or the roads or the thing like that? No, we're actually going to the private markets to build this. So we can talk about that a little bit later. Also, what we're also trying to do is think about how do we take that technology that is sitting on the shelf at the university system and sitting on the shelf at NASA and actually create something that can benefit all of us. Education. We're going to bring programs, services, workforce redevelopment back to the Bay, and we're also going to tap into the philanthropy. Space right now, there's a little bit of an ethos, there's a lot of zeitgeist, there's a lot of romanticism we haven't seen since the 60s, on what it means to go to Mars, what it means to go to the moon and mine an asteroid and tap into those resources, and what does it mean to keep people and humanity safe up in the stars. So we are going to tap into people's heartstrings and actually pour into this site. Next slide, please. This is really important to protect, and I'm just gonna put one thing. California's space economy. Yes, El Segundo exists, and it's known to be really one of the hearts of the space economy. But we're all here representing space technology and advanced aviation companies here in Northern California where the intellectual capital exists. And yes, I will give credit to Stanford, to Berkeley, to San Jose State, to the Foothill De Anza College District. Some of the best educational systems in the world are within a 40-mile radius of each other. University of California, San Francisco, UC Santa Cruz. We have got incredible brains and incredible talent that will be able to tap into this new site. Housing and amenities, and we're gonna protect the Bay in the next slide, and this is gonna be my last slide. So there's been a lot of talk about the site itself, because of the semiconductor industry in the 60s, was polluted. But it's been working on cleaning up, but still there's some of that pollution that is migrating towards the Bay. This Berkeley Space Center serves as a stopgap measure. So if you're worried about that semiconductor plume that many of you have heard about continuing to migrate into our precious San Francisco Bay, we're gonna stop that right there. So a lot of what the development is about is providing a mechanism where we can protect the water, the groundwater, before it goes into the bay. So we're going to keep protecting the environment on this. We're going to make this a zero carbon campus. We're going to use things like recycling black water, which is your poo, by the way. It is like we're going to recycle things, just say things. But we're going to use those new technologies that are being developed on our campuses to actually use this as a playground for our developers to really advance not only the new technologies that is being developed in the buildings, but the buildings themselves. So it's an exciting development. You can go to spacecenter.berkeley.edu to learn more about it, to sign up for our newsletter. I'm the executive director of that program. You can also, if you represent a very large company, you will be able to rent space. You'll be able to build bespoke facilities at this space, and you should contact me. I'll direct you to our private developer and say, oh, they want a $200 million building. You should talk to them. But yes, we are looking for people who want to relocate or co-locate with the university on the site. We believe that it is the 3 stools that are the most important that can really advance those problems. Academia, government, private industry, all working together to transform the world. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Derek. I just can't help to think that, I look at the news these days and I get depressed. Whenever I get depressed, I'm going to call you for a little inspiration. Thank you for that. And I'm sure the downtown Mountain View is just waiting for this to be developed to help their restaurants and retail. And
We were actually thinking about building like either a sky bridge or a gondola system to Castro Street. I'm not kidding. That is not within our plans to think about. Like there's these really cool gondola systems in Mexico, and if you go to I don't know, Nuevo Vallarta, there's a gondola system that's literally 1.5 miles to 2 miles long. What do you think? Castro
We can
Street
do it.
to the Berkeley
We can
Space
do it.
Center?
Oakland Zoo has one too.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doug Wiggle.
all right, our next speaker is Hampton Chan.
Free.
Hampton is the Vice President of Mission Engineering at Maxar Space Systems. I've had the pleasure of working with Hampton, so I have real-time experience to know that you're just a stellar human being with superb technical expertise. So thank you, Hampton, for coming. He has over 30 years of experience in the design, integration, and test of communication satellites, deploying those satellites, getting them on orbit and working. Hampton is currently responsible for Maxar's multi-orbit, multi-mission capable satellites and the overall product roadmaps for strategic technology planning. He has had several key management positions at Maxar, and its predecessor, as I said, was Space Systems Loral. I think we worked together for over 20 years. So I have to share just one story to tell you about the dedication of Hampton. We had a contract that we were doing contract negotiations for in Luxembourg. So me and a couple other members of the team said the easiest way to get to Luxembourg is to fly east to get there. Hampton had a meeting in Kuala Lumpur or somewhere, so he flew west to go around the world the other way. We got there the night before and had a nice relaxing night of sleep, so we're there. Hampton flies into the morning and he has to drive about 1.5 hours from the airport to Luxembourg where we were meeting, and we're like, need Hampton, right? Most companies, when they buy a satellite, they assume the spacecraft is going to work, the power, the telemetry, the data handling, but it's the payload, it's the communication system that they really want to understand the specifications, and Hampton is the guy for that. He arrives and he's a little flustered. I've never seen Hampton flustered before. Apparently he had rented a car and he knew he was late, had to be at this meeting, and he got in the car and he couldn't figure out how to get it in reverse. So apparently in Europe, you have to either lift the shifter up or push it down or something. So, but he could get it into neutral. So he got it into neutral. He got out of the car. He pushed it out of the stall, got back in the car, and drove for the hour or whatever it took to get there, hoping that he wouldn't get stuck in traffic and have to put the car in reverse. So dedicated to the Maxar Space Systems. Welcome, Hampton. Thank you for coming. Hope I didn't embarrass you.
Thank you, Brian. I won't expect you to remember that, but not recommended as you get older. It's really tough to arrive in the morning and then have to go and face the customer after you wrestle with the rental car stick shift, I know how to drive stick shift, I just don't know some of the European model you actually push to get to reverse. So you learn everything on every trip, but thank you for inviting me here. Thank you, Peter, for inviting me. So I wanted to start out by asking the audience. I can't quite see you guys, so you can just yell out, right? So can you tell me 3 or 4 applications that uses satellites? Things that you know of and services you? Weather, somebody said DBS? GPS, correct, yeah, GPS. What? Spies, okay? That's imaging, yeah? Everything, right? Everything, really, you think about it. You may not notice, you may not be aware that satellite is involved, but if you think deeper, somewhere between taking 1 bit from point A to point B, most likely there will be a satellite link somewhere. Information collection or distribution, satellite might be playing a role. It may not be the primary role, it could be the backup nowadays, but satellite is actually a lot more versatile than people think. So with that, I'm gonna play about a 60-second video to give you some perspective of what we're talking about, because I wanted to tell you that satellite, it's a very broad term. It can go with something that I can fit in my hand, basically, those are called CubeSats, to something that is more like a trash can, that could be like the low Earth orbit small sat, to the larger one that is more like a large tour bus. Those are more exquisite, a lot more capability. All right, so if...
For over 65 years, Maxar Space Systems has been at the forefront of satellite innovation. Our Maxar 1300 product line has consistently delivered reliable solutions. Building on our strong foundation, we innovate our products, offering enhanced capabilities tailored to evolving market demands. Dedicated to connecting the world through cutting-edge technology, our solutions bridge gaps and bring people closer. We excel in system integration, offering solutions aligned with customer requirements, enabling mission success. With over 95 satellites in orbit, our ability to deliver reliable space systems is proven. Maxar Space Systems is poised to continue pioneering tomorrow with innovative solutions. Maxar Space Systems, connecting the world today and tomorrow.
So connecting the world, it's truly the key functions of a satellite system. Now, you may not know that there's a company like Maxar Space Systems right here in Northern California. We build satellites, and if you pay attention, we are the #1 commercial satellite provider in the world for the last 30 years. #1 in terms of the number that we have built and deployed in orbit, #1 in terms of the capabilities and all that. But today's environment, satellite, it's more than just for commercial communications applications, right? So I think I would like to just say that, a lot of attention recently with these so-called low Earth orbit satellite, Starlink and all that. There's a good thing and a bad thing to it, right? The good thing is it kind of raised the public awareness, right? What satellites are for. But it also has some downside because it distorts some of the overall broader application of satellite. Low Earth orbit is just one type of satellites. Just real quick, low Earth orbit, what does that mean? It means that the satellite, it's a lot closer to the Earth. So for user, if you imagine you are one of the users, you stand on the ground, you look up, the satellite fly by very quickly because it's rotating a lot faster than the self-rotation, right? So that's one type of satellite system. And then there's another type we call geostationary satellite, which are further away, 36,000 kilometers away from Earth. But those satellites, when you stand on the ground and look up, it appears to be stationary because you have this unique orbit that rotates at the same speed as the Earth. So I would tell you that geo-orbit satellite has been around a lot more longer, has a lot more application than the LEO, right? But the LEO has more attention now is because advancement of technology, they can make these LEO satellites cheaper, but also at the same time, the licensing, the application to put up a LEO constellation is easier than try to get a slot at geostationary orbit, or GEO for short. Okay, so I think one thing that maybe it's something I want to clarify is we built satellites a lot history in the geostationary orbit because that's most of the applications historically. But we also built low Earth orbit satellite. But because those requirements are less popular historically, only recently that it becomes more and more demanding. But it is very tricky because the investment is completely different. The economics is different than a geostationary business plan and all that. So therefore, there are a lot of investment into the low Earth orbit satellite, and it's still kind of TBD, to be determined whether those business venture will become successful or not. All right, but in general, there are a lot of exciting work in the satellite industry. Now, I have a few slides that I would show just to kind of give you a better total picture. So again, we are #1 in the world for the geo communication satellite historically. We have more than 300 satellites that we have built before, and then more than 95 are still flying in orbit right now. You know, maybe 20 years ago, each of these satellites will last about 10 years, 12 years. And today's, our requirement from our customer is 15 years or more. So imagine how many of you have more than 15 years old car? Okay, only a few, right? And those must be classic, right? And we cannot send someone up to the geo orbit to fix the satellite. They have to operate flawlessly, essentially, for 15 years. So space is hard, and Brian is one of the key kind of ingredient in our company history to make sure that the quality are up to that standard. It's really hard to do if you think about it, but yeah, I think Brian has a lot of credit in that area. So next slide. So this is just more than the 4 or 5 applications that you called out, right? My favorite is entertainment. I remember I was talking to one of my college colleagues several years later after we all graduated. He was telling me that he's doing a lot of good for humanity and stuff in the medical field. And then I said that, well, I'm also affecting a lot of people. Because at that time, I was working on a program that is the broadcasting of TV signal. Eventually, it became the direct TV services. So I'm providing entertainment to millions and millions of households that otherwise would not have good programming from a terrestrial sense, right? So all kidding aside, that's one illustration that satellite from GEO can really provide services, data, to a very large footprint. And whatever users are in the footprint, by definition, it can be serviced. It can be serviced by that satellite. So a lot of services are made enabled with a satellite system. Obviously, the design on the satellite system, the payload is different for different applications. Next. So I'm going to give you some example. I'm going to fly through this real quick. Go on, next. So this one is very exciting. We're actually part of the overall team to go back to the moon. We are building a module called Power Propulsion Element, PPE for short, that is part of the Artemis program. That will take us back essentially to the moon, have a outpost there. And it's a satellite that we adopted from our communication satellite platform to become this very powerful solar electric propulsion element that can push a human habitat module from Earth to the moon orbit. Exciting. Next. And we also adopted our communication satellite platform to become a satellite that we can send to an asteroid and try to collect samples and do some examination with it. And this is another kind of adaptation of our communications satellite platform to a scientific mission that we're all very proud of. Next. Okay, so this one is a very good example that this satellite is actually a dual mission satellite. The bottom 2/3 of the satellite that you can see, which is actually the top in this picture because the satellite is quote unquote upside down because it has to face the Earth, right? So the 2/3 of the satellite is for a communications payload. So it's providing services to like cellular backhaul or taking enterprise terminals back to the home office and all that. And then the top 1/3 is actually environmental sensor, short acronym is called TEMPO, that we launch on top of a commercial satellite. And so 2 different customers, but this is one of the way that actually you can kind of increase the value of a satellite, single satellite mission by providing 2 completely different services. Tempo is still collecting pollution data and send it to the ground station for the scientific evaluation of the pollution status over North America. Next. So this is a large class of satellite connectivity. So in addition to broadcasting TV channels, we also build satellite that provide enterprise data connection as well as consumer. So you might have heard of satellite internet broadband service called Hughes Network System, or the Jupiter is their service name. The company, it's called Hughes Network System. And also Viasat. They provide satellite-based internet connection. And those technology actually are pretty amazing because in order to kind of close a communication link to a relatively small terminal that you have in your house, and then be able to connect and send data at moderate data rate and all that, it's something that is pretty amazing still. And so these are not mainstream internet connection by any means, right? Because most of us probably would have either terrestrial Wi-Fi, ADSL in the old days, and now maybe fiber optics and all that. But satellite connection to connect data is very important for those remote area, as well as countries that you don't have that infrastructure. Or you have a scenario like Australia, population density is very low, very thin, right? It doesn't make sense for them to line up tons and tons of cables to every household either. So it's a very powerful complementary capability to the core terrestrial network, satellite is, okay? Next. Okay, so this is some of those spy satellite or imaging satellite. I think recently you probably have seen some picture showing satellite images of some world events or some natural disasters. If you pay attention to the lower right corner, bottom right corner, most likely it will say something like courtesy of Maxar Technologies or Maxar Intelligence. So Maxar Space System built part of these satellite for the whole entire fleet for our sister company, Maxar Intelligence, that provide this type of services. It's a low Earth orbit type satellite that essentially has a very powerful telescope or camera that can monitor the Earth and provide information. So this is a very important field because technology has existed for quite some time, but is also, dominated by the national entity, right? But now this is the one of the major steps to make some subset of these images available commercially. So we built all those satellites. Thanks. Go ahead. And this is the name of our product line for those low Earth orbit application. Next. Next. So this is just a pictorial view of all the satellites that we have delivered and are still flying in orbit, more than 95. Next. So this is the factory right down the road here. This is in Palo Alto. We have another facility in San Jose, so maybe the center of universe or center of the gravity is somewhere in Mountain View. But so Palo Alto actually is not very well known. We have a factory. You have a satellite manufacturing factory in the middle of Palo Alto. It's not too far away from Costco and 101. So this is just some picture of the satellite. If you can see, a person is about this, and that gives you a relative scale of the satellite. It's pretty big. Next. That's it. Last one, I believe. All right, thank you very much.
Wow, Hampton, that was so exciting. I'm tempted to come out of retirement, but not totally. Thank you. All right, our final speaker before Q&A is Rich from NASA, and Rich is going to talk about his job as liaison for the NASA Small Business Innovation Center and Small Business Technology Transfer Center. And it will be interesting to know that what you do interacts with the community and really powers the connection between industry and commercial entities. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good evening. How's everyone? So let me just first say that after Clem was talking about some of the physics and stuff, I'm actually an astrophysicist. So I work both fields, both sides, that developing instruments, and I came to Palo Alto or Mountain View and Ames here in Silicon Valley because I got interested is how can small companies begin and work with the researchers, and how can we develop better technologies and sciences, and not just coming from universities, but from everyone. So next slide, please. So this is just the thing that we are all explorers and pioneers. So you don't have to be this or that, but you can just work on things. This is an image of this mission called Viper. This was a rover to go to the moon south pole and look for ice or volatiles. So the idea is that we will find ice in craters that are shadowed. And then you can convert the ice to hydrogen and oxygen. Well, you have fuel and breathing possibilities. So this is, again, one thing that we had technologies coming in from the SBIR program, Small Business Innovative Research. So next slide. So I'm not going to go through all of the details of this, but the idea of the program is that we reduce a solicitation, and small companies, less than 500 people, some of them are very small, will basically say, all right, I can build a better wheel for your rover or better batteries or whatever the case may be, and they get money to try to develop it, and we'll see if they finish developing it and it works, we'll buy it. And now the program is also linked with universities to the STTR program. And the idea is that at a university like Berkeley, we had people work with a small company, develop some technology that then we used on missions or other things. And also some of these companies grew to bigger ones. Next slide, please. Okay, and again, these are all the offices or the, not branches, but basically Defense Department and Health and Services and so on that have SBIR programs. And the idea of it is Congress said that if you have $100 million or more in research, you should set aside 3% for small companies to be able to bid on technology. And the idea is we'll get young folks involved in this usually, and they'll develop a company and a technology, and then the company will grow. And all of a sudden, we have a lot of little small companies, and you go, well, they're just small companies. So what about, the Lockheeds and all this stuff? Well, some of these companies, for example, you might have heard of Qualcomm, it began as an SBIR company to be able to hire employees and all this stuff, and now it's, what, $11 billion capitalization? So companies can grow. And also, these small businesses that one has, they do work with what we call these folks, the primes, the big companies. And they're good at developing not only R&D, but also the big, what I would call the flagship missions, just like the James Webb Telescope, the Hubble, and so on. Anyway, next slide, please. And again, we want to unlock the innovative thinking. And I'm not reading this out because I don't have enough time. But again, the idea is that you can have an academic principal investigator or one at a company, and they're the ones who are kind of running the research and development. And once they have that done, they can have grad students if they're at a university, or hire other engineers and other employees to help develop technology. Next slide, please. Anyway, this is just, I'll go to the next slide. We don't need to go through the thing. So basically, a quick thing. So 6 months, you get $150K if you get the solicitation through to develop your idea. And then if it's developed, you get another 2 years and $850K to actually try to produce a prototype or something, a laptop model that will work. So you go, all right, it's not much money. But the thing that it does give you is, it'll involve either DOD, NASA, or one of the government agencies, researchers, to work with you. And so now you have kind of an in. And by in, I mean the following thing, that if let's say Lockheed or Maxar or somebody wanted to propose to build a satellite for NASA, they would have to go through a request for proposals. We would have to say, yeah, we want one of these satellites, and they could bid on it. And the idea is that we have companies bidding on things. Once you've gotten an SBIR, that means you've gone through a competition. So we can say, hey, that's great stuff. Okay, here's $10 million. Develop it further. And we have examples of these things like we were talking about, small satellites. And the Gateway mission to the moon, there's one company that built this thing called the Capstone. And it's a small satellite that's tracing out the orbit that the Gateway lunar habitat is going to have. So it's a small little satellite, CubeSat, and it was launched, and the SBIR program supported it and built components for it. So again, this is something that's part of ongoing things. We also have a thing called Starling, that's 3 satellites that are flying around, and usually satellites have to talk to the ground each time. And we want to, in case of there's conflict in the world, we don't want to be interrupted. So they're working on models of how the satellites talk to each other without the ground links. And you go, okay, big deal. But this is where the future is going, and these small companies are developing that, and I'm sure all my colleagues here are shaking their heads, they're involved in that also. Next slide, please. Okay, here's an example. So this is Perseverance rover on Mars. And as you can see, there's about 5, 6, 7, there's 8 companies, there were SBIR companies that produce things. For example, let me just give you Honeybee Robotics at the bottom. They make drills. They began in Brooklyn, of all places, which I'm a New Yorker, so I can say that. They have a drill that goes down and can go into the ground, and the question is, how do you remove material so it doesn't clog up the drill? Sorry, not the grill. But so they developed a technology for it, and we've used it on Mars. We're also developing something that go to some of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn and see if we can drill into the ground and stuff. Of course, one of the moons that Europa, the ice is a little bit too thick for their drill. We'll need 10 kilometers or so. But again, the idea is that you have now a small company. It was eventually bought by a large company. So again, people got, if you want to call it elevated, they're part of a bigger organization. But for again, the SBIR thing that usually people say, well, it's a small company. How can we make sure it really does work? Well, we are using them for, as they call it, for things within the system that you can't have failing. Next slide, okay, yes. All right, so here's the things, benefits of Earth. So Fibratech is a company that actually flew on space station, and they worked out a way of monitoring climate change and things like that in the Earth's atmosphere. Lambda Vision is a real, actually I know one of the principals in it. They develop retinas and scaffolding. So how can you build a retina if you lose your retina due, as you get older, to vision problems? And they've actually been testing it on space, and it can improve the quality. And people say, what does space station do for you? Well, there are certain things that low gravity or near zero G gravity produces. And then you have things like a fire extinguisher or better technologies. And again, ultraviolet sensor for improved observations of the oceans. And we partner, and these companies partner with the Lockheeds, the Maxars, and other companies along the lines also. So it's kind of, again, as was said about Berkeley, we're developing, or I think this gentleman here said that we're developing an ecosystem. And nature ecosystems work. There's different components, as you probably well know. Okay, and here's a nice, interesting example. So this company, the professor got some money from National Science Foundation, and his grad student and him found these extremophiles in one of the hot springs. And, okay, what are extremophiles? They're these little critters that seem to survive high temperatures, and you always wonder where they get the nutrients, and it's the heat and other things. Well, this particular set are such that you can dump any waste product, including human waste, onto them, and they'll produce proteins in a more efficient way than other plants can. So one thing NASA did is, hey, this is a source of food for astronauts, producing protein. And we had an STTR with the university, and it's a way of kind of developing these extremophiles to be able to maybe coat the surface of the inside of a spacecraft. And you say, okay, great, nice. But they got $1 million from the Bill Gates Foundation and another $500 million from other companies to develop food products. So here's something kind of an offshoot that came out of NASA's thing for wanting to go to space and keep astronauts alive. And as folks have said, you know, how do you keep people alive, going to Mars, to the moon, and so on. So again, we look for innovations coming around out of these things. And you know, I see a lot of young folks in the audience, and you know, that's the future. You have opportunities here. It's not as rigid as it used to be. Because in my days, I'll say it's, you know, it's an old person here, in my days, it was you talked to your thesis advisor. If you didn't go into academia, they felt like, oh, what are you going to do? And I remember telling him I was going to work on small sats, and he said, there's no future in that. And so things change radically. So, you know, again, my point is that just because, you know, you're doing whatever, that you can't expand and do even more. And, you know, work for Lockheed, Maxar, NASA. There's all sorts of opportunities along those lines. Okay, I think that's my last slide. Yep. So anyway, yeah, I'd be more than happy to discuss anything with anyone. And my final words are definitely go to school, get degrees, work in anything that your heart wants to. And, you know, the universe is yours.
Thank you. 4 fantastic speakers. Thank you all very much. So I'm going to ask just, I think, 2 questions to get the creative juices going, and then I'll open it up to the audience. So I have to give the background for the first question. So if any of us were to meet somebody sitting beside you that you don't know, or you go into a party and you meet somebody that you've never met before, and it's probably not a good idea to brag about yourself, right? It just wouldn't come across very well. But I'm going to ask you to brag about yourself. I'm giving you license to do so because I want to lift the energy in this room about this industry that you all work in. So I would like each one of you to pick and tell the audience about either the project that you're most proud of that you worked on, or the project that was most fun for you to work on in your career. So let's go in the same order in which we spoke. So Clem, if you will.
I would have to say that both the most fun and the most fulfilling, and that makes me the most proud, is the geostationary lightning mapper. So Hampton talked about geostationary orbit. We have weather satellites there right now, today, in the sky as the GOES series of weather satellites that's been going since the 1970s. GOES 18 and GOES 19 are covering you right now through the National Weather Service. And one of the sensors on those was built in Palo Alto again, the lightning mapper. So if you've ever seen one of those cool animations of a hurricane or a big storm system moving through with lightning dancing on the clouds, that was probably from GLM, the sensor that I worked on. And the coolest part about it was that when we finished building it and delivered it to NASA, NASA said, well, why don't you help us, you know, tune it up on orbit? And it's sort of like they tossed us the keys. You know, we built a nice car, and let's see what this baby can do. Take it around the track, and that was, I gotta say, real highlight of my career.
Thank you.
So I'm doing penance. I am a reformed attorney. I've been practicing law for over 25 years, and I sort of landed in this role where I was able to negotiate a deal using my legal expertise, a ground lease with NASA, and a joint venture that created the Berkeley Space Center. But I knew that I was doing something right when I was walking the halls of the Space Sciences Laboratory on the hill above UC Berkeley campus, and I literally, like, you're carrying your school books and you run into somebody because you're looking down, or actually probably more appropriate today is you're looking at your phone and you run into somebody. And I caused this scientist to drop all of her stuff on the ground. And I was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. And she was, oh wait, this is being recorded, ticked. She was mad. And I said, well, wait, you know, I was just, what do you do here? And then her eyes lit up and she said, oh, I'm building some instrumentation for, this instrument that is going to be detecting life on Titan, one of the moons of Saturn, on this launch mission that is going in 2030. And I was like, oh, that is so cool. This is what I want to do. I want to go around and find these people who are stuck in their labs, throw objects at them or bump into them or make them drop their things so that they will really tell me what really, really cool things they're working on. I feel like I'm just like special adjacent. I'm adjacent to people who are working on very special things. But it is the honor of my career to work in public service, being the reformed lawyer that I am, having been in private industry for 25 years, and then getting to work on this transformational technology in this place that will make magic happen. So that's the most rewarding part of my career. Thanks.
Very cool. Thank you. Hampton.
Well, for me, I think every satellite that I involved with are specials, right? Every one of them is so special.
adjacent.
But if I would have to point out one that is most rewarding and I think also is most fun is the early career. I get to do quite a bit of both design and hands-on work, and this is the so-called first generation direct broadcasting satellites. So I was part of a very small team, 2 people, who actually formulated the procedure to do what we call phase combining 2 TWTA, 2 high-power amplifiers together, and make sure that they work over frequency and over temperature and over 15 years, 12 years back then, and also married that to a antenna that was pretty new at that time, which has a shape surfaces, and actually we fold it in a way that we can fit inside a launch vehicle fairing, and then we unfold it in orbit, and because we need the area, for those of you engineers out there, you need larger area to achieve higher gain and all that, to close the requirement to broadcast from high altitude all the way down to the ground. So that project is very rewarding, and also it's very a lot of fun because we made mistakes, but we actually were able to figure it out, and we were able to convince the chief scientists that what we did was actually going to work, right? So maybe one last comment is I encourage those of you that are, maybe kind of looking for things, where should I go to, what field should I go into? You always have the opportunity to learn stuff in a theoretical way. Even today's, right? You can learn a lot online and all that, but getting some hands-on experience, it's, to me, I think it's very valuable. You need to complement with both, so.
Thank you, Elton. Rich, bring us home.
Okay, so I'm going to jump back to the astrophysics side of things. After I got my degree out of grad school, I went to work at NASA, and I work on this project called the Cosmic Background Explorer. This measured the temperature of the remnant of the Big Bang. It's 2.73 degrees above absolute zero, or 2.73 degrees Kelvin. So I worked with this gentleman, John Mather, who won the Nobel Prize, and the first Nobel Prize for NASA, and I think the only one so far. And he also is one of the senior scientists on the James Webb. Extremely sharp guy. And I had the honor of working with him and writing software, and also got some hardware experience of worrying about vibrations on some of the instruments and things like that. So I was very proud of that, and very enjoyable. And again, going with this comment that, yeah, there's a lot of opportunity, and you can shift. You don't like, for example, I don't do science at this point, but with having enough of the science background, you can talk to all these folks, and you can talk to the scientists who are trying to do the measurements and things like that, and help them with kind of getting the pieces together.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Okay, last question from me, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So you don't all have to answer this, but you can if you desire to. As noted already, there are some young people in the audience, and there might be parents of young people at home that aren't here today. But I'm guessing that some people in the audience have got a little bit excited about space. So if you could say either, what was the catalyst to get you into this industry, and or what would you recommend for somebody for education or activities to prepare themselves for a job related to this space industry? So popcorn method, fun, yeah.
So we're in Silicon Valley. It's a place filled with strivers, people who work really hard and believe in this ethos that the harder you work, the more successful you'll be. But I want to say something that's a little bit contrarian about that. There's a lot of luck involved, and you have to stay open to chance. You have to stay humble to that, right? And if you start believing that your success is entirely dependent on how hard you work and how you strive, you will just hurt yourself. There's so much of an element of luck. So for example, the mission that I just told you about, the geostationary lightning mapper, the way I got my start on that was by luck. My other project ran out of money. I needed a new project. And they just gave me a little task to do to start with. And then, you know, one thing led to another. So stay open to that.
I'm the non-scientist on the table, so I'm a little bit outmatched, outnumbered, outgained. But what I would say is there's actually many facets to space. There's literature. There's when we actually were thinking about the Berkeley Space Center, we brought in not only our engineering, our physicists, and our chemists, and the people you typically see to work on space technology, but we brought in linguists. We brought in our creative dance team, our literature folks, to think about what is the possibility when you're thinking about building a community not only here, but community up in space. You're still going to need all those personality types. These people have to get along. You're going to need your neurobiologists and your neuroscientists and your psychologists to make sure that people can live together. You're going to need people to write books, right? You're going to need, so all of those facets of getting a career in space technology, yeah, your parents might want you to be an engineer or something like that. They might want you to be a lawyer. Don't do it, don't do it. But find that angle that you're passionate about, and you'll get there. You'll get there. It took me 25 years, but I got there. So when my brother, and remember my brother Darren, and my brother Derek, and Darren and David. Actually, David does not exist. He's my imaginary friend. Darren does. Darren is my identical twin. And I called him and he said, "What are you doing in there? You're like creating this like Berkeley Space Center." That actually wasn't the name at the time. I said, "I think, you know," I said, "you know the movie Star Trek and Starfleet Academy is in Marin?" And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "It's actually going to be at Moffett Field." So I'm building Starfleet Academy.
So I guess my advice is pick something that you like, enjoy, right? But also be prepared to adapt and reapply it in a surprise way, right? And for example, in our space industry, in our satellite industry, we need much more than just engineer or scientists, right? We need lawyers, we need financial people, we need marketing people, we need business development people, we need people with arts and background more than just science in addition to science. Of course, there's a relative quantity difference, right? But find something that you enjoy, but also keep yourself in a state that you are eager to learn new things. Because I think in today's environment, it's really up to us. If you are motivated, you can find a lot of useful information. You don't have to be an expert, but at least you wanted to get to a level of understanding so that you can kind of decide for yourself whether this is something you want to go further or not, and reduce your screen time on the phone. So.
Okay, this is kind of a funny story. When I was 12, I was going to get a telescope for my birthday. So I went with my father to the store, and someone bought the last telescope. I said, "I'll get my revenge. I'm going to read every book on astronomy there is." And I started reading astronomy. And again, this is this serendipitous thing. All of a sudden I said, "Wow, this is interesting. This is interesting." And I proceeded from that. So again, as colleagues have said, you look at luck, you look at places, and at first you don't think maybe you want to do that or work on that, and then things will evolve. And again, it's getting your interest into it. And don't think like I've had students who say, "Oh, well, I can't do calculus," or "I'm not a math brain," and all this stuff. I said, you don't have to be. There's a lot of areas, and like Hampton was saying also, there's a lot of other pieces that you can be science savvy, but help out the people who want to do the theoretical or the real hands-on science, that you can have them as a team who will make it all happen.
Yeah, I want to say, Clem, you really fired some neurons for me, and that is, I went to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland, and my cruise between my junior and senior year, we had to do a ship tour. Well, mine was on a nuclear submarine. I boarded a nuclear submarine in Chinhae, South Korea, and came up 4 weeks later in Guam. So I decided I wanted to be on nuclear submarines. The technology was just so amazing. Well, I didn't make it into the nuclear program, and I was devastated. Thought that was the end of things. But if I had been into that program, they needed those officers so badly as time went on that I would not have been accepted into graduate school to get a degree in space systems engineering, and I wouldn't have had a space degree. So you have to roll with the punches. And Hampton talked about the high power spacecraft. I was intimately involved in the qualification of the planar magnetics that allowed us to do higher power on orbit and the lithium-ion power system to do that. And you saw the picture of the satellite going to an asteroid. That couldn't be done without that technology. So it all plays together. And just looking forward to now seeing what the audience wants to hear from this esteemed team. So Peter is going to run the microphone because I have trouble seeing. There's a question right in front.
Let me bring the mic.
One is, I recently read a book called The Privatization of Everything by a group called In the Public Interest, and it looks at the delicate balance between what is a public good and how carefully you have to construct those contracts to ensure that the public is reaping a benefit from a public-private relationship. And I also remember when I lived in Austin, Texas, there was a tremendous controversy about the funding of a biology building by Jim Bob Moffett, who was responsible for some of the world's largest polluting mines, and concerns about how that could compromise the integrity of research. So I'd like to see if you could, if each of you could contribute a little bit on how you do that dance between what is a positive public-private relationship and how do you avoid the negatives. And then the other question I have is for Maxar Systems. I was wondering about how much of your imagery is available to the public, because I understand you have some of the sharpest resolution, some of the best imagery, and that has been quite important to supporting the war in Ukraine. And I did a bit of research ahead of time. I understand there might have been some changes, and I was wondering if you could address what Maxar's current relationship is with Ukraine and how that might be evolving in our current environment, in our current climate with our ever-changing relationship with Ukraine.
Who wants to answer the first question? I think that's...
I felt like she was staring into my soul with that question. So, obviously, when you take something like a public university, the flagship of the University of California system, you have to be really careful that what you do and what you try to achieve really is for the overall good of the public. And that attitude has certainly been permeating through this new era of innovation and entrepreneurship. I'm proud to say that UC Berkeley is designated as the #1 startup university in the world. I mean, that should come as no surprise. 1,800 companies last year started by students and alumni and faculty. And many of those companies not only are born from the entrepreneurial spirit of students that came out of, are matriculated through Cal, but also our graduate students, our scientists, and our faculty are pulling research out of their lab and into the public sphere. One of the best ways to get something out of lab and into the public sphere is to commercialize it. So if you look at Jennifer Doudna's work, and she has won the Nobel Prize for CRISPR-Cas9 technology, she has what's called the Innovation Genomics Institute, IGI. IGI has founded, in the last 5 years alone, 22 companies. 22 companies, each one that is focused on a different way of using gene editing and CRISPR-related technology. So it may be targeting cancer research, or it may be another thing like reducing methane gas in cows, because they apparently pass gas a lot, or gene editing a disease or a strawberry. I'm convinced this is how Professor Doudna does her company's like Nanobiosciences. She's like, she gets a postdoc, like a graduate student, she said, and she lines them all up and she goes, and you get a car, and you get a car, and you get a car. And what she's saying is, you get a company, you get a company, you get a company. Every single application of gene editing is a company. And that is how we get those good ideas, those transformational technologies out of the lab and into the commercial realm where they can do the most good. It is also important to note that there has been a complete disinvestment in public education by the state. And that's no fault of many of our elected officials who are hamstrung by very limited means. But the reduction of support in the public goods means we, people like me, have to find a new way to grow the universities, to increase the number of students that are educated by the campus, and to bring those innovations to market. The other ways we have to shut them down and reduce our programs. One way to do that is by monetizing what we do, by investing in the startups, finding those startups, and bringing that big equity win back to the university to support the program. My job, building this 2 million square foot campus that is going to cost $4 billion of non-public money, I get a salary and I get, well, I actually don't get coffee, I have to buy my own coffee. But I have no economic benefit if it succeeds or fails. I don't get a bonus on it. I did that as a banker. I did my time doing that, okay? But now we have all of these public servants, people who spent their entire careers at NASA, and we're motivated by what we can do and the romanticism and the things that we can accomplish and change just by doing what we do. So I'm a huge believer in this economic potential and the way that we can bring technology out of the labs and solve these big problems. And I could go ad nauseum about it. I think I just got the hook. But I think it's just really important to note that this is another fending mechanism. When you see other things, this is another toggle that we have to switch. So I'm a big fan of it.
Let me just add real quick, and it kind of ties the question you had last night as well. Sometimes you just don't know, right? So when there's a company called Samasource that their whole mission is that all you need is a satellite connection and a laptop to lift people out of poverty. So they create jobs in Africa by training people to do tasks that aren't easily automated, and they do that with a satellite link and a laptop. So, for example, when the earthquake hit Haiti years ago, most people in Haiti do have cell phones, but the infrastructure had crumbled. So Samasource went in there and they literally put a battery in a hut, a solar panel, and a satellite connection link on the roof to make connections of people that were asking for help. And since they had a cell phone link through the satellite, they had the geo coordinates embedded in where the text message came from. So somebody had text women in labor under bridge, but they had the geo coordinates so they could not only tell to send a doctor there, but somebody that knew how to deliver a baby. And, you know, I saw the picture of this woman holding her baby that was born because of a satellite connection. We didn't build the satellite to do that, but it enables those kinds of things to happen.
I think 20 more seconds on this, and I apologize for stepping on, because I think a part of the question was, how do you decide which goods should go to market, and how do you decide what public resources should go to, and there's a little bit, and also to work on technology that might not benefit humanity, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with like making sure that the market is well informed of where it comes from. But I can also think that the impetus behind many of the scientists and the researchers are well-intentioned, right? They really do want to work on transformational technologies that solve these really incredible problems. So taking that spirit and driving it through is what's going.
And let me just add, for the SBIR program, for example, we review every proposal. We got like 1,000 proposals in this time, and the scientists sit down and review them. And the technologies are such that it's double-edged sword, right? I mean, you can develop something that is good for the benefit and good, and maybe down the line someone else will use it for something else. But the good thing with the SBIR program is the company who proposes it, usually they're small, and they want to aspire to do something with NASA, something that makes sense. Now, if we got a proposal, and again, I'm just talking from top of my head, and I know if I reviewed a proposal and it said, well, we're going to develop a better killing machine for everyone with this new great technology, that would kind of put some flags up, one would imagine. And also, in the end, we have a high-level executive at headquarters that makes the final decisions, because you present the proposals and this is what they're going to do, and say, hey, does this make sense with NASA or it doesn't? Now, you know, working in a place like Livermore, which I have colleagues there too, they have a different, they have science, but the science is used for certain specific things, as everybody knows, and you know, you try to, again, how do you do it and control it? So it's a tough issue.
Okay, I'd like to put the second question on hold to allow other people to ask questions. We'll come back to it if we have time at the end, or you can talk to Hampton after. Next question.
That was exactly what I was going to say,
Okay.
is that we want to make sure that that
I used to work
information
for
gets out.
Peter. I know how he thinks.
Well, thanks for already a fantastic panel and great discussion. My question is a steamy question, right? I grew up as an artist making portraits, and that was during when the space shuttle was taking off. And, you know, so for me, a kind of a creativity and science, it was always blended. So we have STEAM, right? The science, integration of science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And for me, the arts in that constellation are really the humanities, the beginning with curiosity, right? So if I'm sensing that you, 5 of you might agree with that importance of that A, and if so, what can be done and what's the value of encouraging that kind of approach within the education system for young people?
That's a vast question, but I'll try to nibble at the edge
In
of it.
under 2 minutes. Thanks.
So everything we do is based on creativity. There's a place for creativity in everything, even like the most boring and obscure and arcane process. So creativity is a thread that we try to connect and promote and keep alive in every corner of what we do. You know, the humanities are enormously important as well. There's a lot of nerds where I work. I am a nerd, but I'll tell you, it's so important to be good at reading and writing, right? So when you're aiming for a STEM career, don't just go for the technical bits. An engineer who knows how to read and write, for example, write a really good procedure that is easily understandable, that is incredibly valuable. So I really agree that there's an enormous place for the arts, creativity, and the humanities, even in these very sort of advanced STEM fields that we work in.
And just want to add that astronauts, they took a lot of pictures of the Earth. Some became photographers, and quite a number of them, I don't know about the number, but became artists and started painting after they retired or came back to Earth because they were so moved by what they saw. So again, the creativity.
Good point.
I would just like to add that I was educated in the Asian system, right? And my kids went through the American educational system. In comparison, our system here is actually much more balanced in terms of emphasizing non-technical aspect of the curriculum already. So it's not perfect, but I think it's much better than a lot of the Asian system. So point number one. Number two is I think it's also equally important for the individual student to want to expand and try different things too. I think I tend to agree with Clem that I think even a lot of the engineering problem requires a little bit of creative thinking to find a solution, right? And they don't teach you, you know, the step to go through to tackle those problems. It has to be a combination of you have to have some fundamental understanding of the problem, but apply other creative thinking and problem-solving skills, and talk to other people. Nothing get accomplished as an individual. A lot you need to work as a team. Sometimes you talk to someone that you don't expect actually give you a very valuable input, and a light bulb went off, right? So I think it goes both ways. The educational system needs to emphasize it enough, but the individual, the student, and the family, the parents also need to kind of encourage the student to expand and try little things.
Are there other hands?
Going back.
I would just say that unfortunately, I'm not in a position to comment on that.
Two silly questions. The first picture you showed, the color came from the satellite camera, or was it added afterwards? And the second question is, what's going on with the building one? Hangar one.
So the first one, the colors you saw were not the real colors, because the real colors are shades that your eye can't see. They're infrared colors. So in order to represent those colors of light to the human eye, you necessarily have to translate them into colors that we can perceive. So it's not what you would see looking at the heavens.
So Hangar 1, I mentioned this earlier, it's iconic, it's on the Historic National Register of Places, and it was leased to Planetary Ventures, which is a subsidiary of Google. Part of their lease was to remediate. So you saw it was taken apart, all the skeletal framing, and it was cleaned, and it took many, many years, and they're not quite finished, but it's gonna be done. But it's going to be a shell right now. There's nothing that's happening in there, million cubics, but conceptualizing, what are the possibilities? And we've thought a lot about it, and we've talked a little bit about what Google could do with that space. We thought all about like drone races would be really cool, indoor drone racing, that would be awesome. That's probably not the best use of space, but a lot of it could be like, drone and, because there's a lot of volume in there, and a lot of experimentation can happen with, unmanned air vehicles and things like that. Or it could just use what it was, which is lighter than air vehicles. LTA is in the other hangar, and that is one of the largest dirigible companies out there, and it's using alternative gas to create airships. And so somewhat like a steampunk novel, maybe there's a large airship in the future that could go back into Hangar 1.
I read once they had weather inside.
Yeah, it has its own weather system. Yeah, because it's so high up, it creates its own weather patterns. Yeah, it's rain from the ceiling. You're right. Crazy.
I saw a hand up here, I think.
Just a quick question. Each of you has your own kind of perspective on the way that industry is evolving. Disruptively speaking, can you speak to what's happening with the AI from your perspectives, and what do you see as like the most impactful events over the past maybe year or 2 years that you can see and forecast what's coming your way in the next 2 or 3 years?
I have two comments about AI. So first, we're all using it, right? It's already here. It's definitely a step change in technology. We use it to increase our productivity mostly at this point, but there are many, many things that it can help with. One of the aspects that we are studying at Lockheed is how to do AI at the edge. When you're out in deep space with a computer that is not particularly capable, and with a data connection that is not very large, in other words, you don't have a server farm, you have the computing equivalent of 2 sticks in a rock. How can you apply AI algorithms to increase the value of the data that is sent down? And that's a very interesting question we're working on.
So I'll add that I think with our sister company, Maxar Intelligence, they're using, more accurately phrased as machine learning to process the raw images to extract the useful information. So I think that will continue to become more and more powerful. And that's general trend. As far as on our space system side, what we expect is to have more machine learning type algorithm to help us simplify the repetitive part of our job. like ground procedures and maybe some of the generation of information for our customer, things like that. And then eventually maybe some aspect of the satellite operation will be automated on board. We have certain level of automation already because when a satellite is 36,000 kilometers away, something they have to, if something wrong happens, the satellite has to protect itself, right? So there's a certain element of that already, but obviously it's nowhere near what people generally talk about, AI or machine learning in today's environment.
And I'll just quickly add that at NASA, I agree with all the folks here. You know, we're looking at ways how we can use it for deep space missions, but also one of our programs called Ignite, one of our topics is AI manufacturing. In other words, you're building something in orbit. What's the optimal shapes of things like that? So again, we'd use AI to help out on that. You know, telescope supports. You know, you look at something like James Webb. Would AI have helped design something like that? Probably. So, yes.
I just think it's the ultimate cheat code. You know, I used to be like really upset about AI because it was going to replace my job as a lawyer. But then I started using it. I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty good, you know. And I just want to thank our AI overlords for the opportunity to be here today. Thank you.
You'll be spared in the robot
I will be
apocalypse.
spared.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question. But before we do, I just wanted to point out that the question was raised earlier about jobs in aerospace. And I think one of the things we've seen from our panels is they all come from different backgrounds. And not only that, but as we know in tech, you know, there are all sorts of jobs that aren't engineering jobs. And so, again, I think a lot of our speakers said, you know, follow your dreams. And be sure to listen and look for opportunities that allow your dream to flourish. They don't necessarily have to be exactly what you've seen on the screen or whatever. I remember I used to take kids on tours of different businesses, and they'd say, I never knew they did that. So please stay curious. One last question.
This is a question for Derek about the Berkeley Space Center.
Sure.
So I've been around Mountain View for a long time, and after Moffett Federal Airfield was BRAC'd, there was a proposal for the big, you know, educational innovation center. Deja vu all over again. So that was more of a pipe dream. How's the Space Center coming along, and what is the degree of confidence of completion?
The biggest difference between then, because there was something around 2003 and through 2007. The biggest difference between then and now is, you know, I'm there. I mean, make no mistake that, you know, some people have like really personal passions about this. This is my capstone project. I'm going to make sure that there is a shovel in the ground or I'm in the ground. So I think it takes that type of tenacity, and it takes that, you know, drive to push people through something, because anybody who works at NASA or is familiar with this project knows that the patient was on the table many, many, many times, and I was holding the paddles. And then I would hand the paddles to NASA, and then I would hand the paddles to my private venture partner, and we all kept going, oh, it's alive again, here we go, we're off to the races. Then COVID hits. The commercial market, you know, collapses. You know, we get a new administration with different priorities. I mean, every single day represents a new challenge, but there is will, and there will be a way. So how are we doing? We're through the environmental process. So that is going to be going up for approvals in front of the UC Regents and also federal approval by early next year. And then what happens is we go horizontal. That's all the stuff in the ground, sewer, water, energy, power, that kind of stuff gets built, because there is like porcelain piping at NASA Ames right now. It is crazy. And we're gonna rebuild all of that stuff that goes in there. We're gonna bring new power and new types of way to bring power, non-traditional power, to that field, and new ways to recycle the water and to treat the water that's in there. And then we go vertical. Vertical means we start building those buildings. And it could take 3 years if we get a slow movement in the market, or it could take 12 years. According to our financial model, we build it, made it conservative. Let's take our time, let's build it right, let's get the right companies in there that are working, that want to work with NASA, that want to work with the University of California system, that wants to do public good, that wants to be in the heart of Silicon Valley, that works with municipalities and hire people from Mountain View and hire people from Sunnyvale. We want to curate this so that it is a gem within the NASA and UC ecosystem. This represents the single largest increase of footprint for the University of California system in Silicon Valley ever. And it is the largest expansion of UC Berkeley. So we're gonna make sure it works. There's a lot of people working on it. It's not just my passion project. There's dozens of people I could point to that are working on it. And we're committed. We're committed to make it and see it through.
Okay, I would like to close it out, and this will be a lightning round. Each contestant, I almost said, no, each panelist will have 30 seconds. I don't know if Derek can say anything in 30 seconds, so might have. I love your enthusiasm, don't get me wrong. Okay, 30 seconds of what would you like the audience to take away from tonight?
Gosh, I think you should take away from tonight that it takes so many different people, so many different talents, so many different skills, and so many different backgrounds to pull off these amazing projects. And so I want you to know that there is a role for everyone in this, and you'd be surprised.
I just think it's really cool that all of you showed up. I mean, I think many of you probably didn't have any idea what this was going to be about. I'm like, oh yeah, tech showcase, aerospace, that sounds cool. But it's everything that you contribute, everything that you bring to these questions, very diverse thoughts, opinions, thoughts about the subject. Obviously, I'm a succubus. I feed off your energy. So I need these opportunities to hear from all of you and to be engaged. So be engaged, be curious, send me questions. Don't send me questions. Send them to my colleagues if they're really hard, or I'll deflect them anyway. But just thank you very much for all of you being here. It's really important.
Thank you.
I guess for me, simple message, supports anything to do with satellite space, and it's exciting, it's continuing to evolve, and there's a lot of opportunities, and it may not be obvious today, but I think it's one of those trends that it's almost like the time and arrow. It only go in one direction. So just stay interested, stay involved, and hope to run into some of you in my work environment in the future.
Just want to say that we all are human and explorers, and we should not give that up. And some people get focused just on, let's say, I want to become a billionaire. Well, just use your brains for things to expand, whether it's art, science, making life better for humanity. And the more you do in terms of educating yourself and learning and understanding, the more you'll be able to relate to other people. So it's not just, oh, I'm just going to be a simple engineer doing this, not simple engineer doing that. And the final thing I want to just say about the satellite that's going to the asteroid Psyche, that one of the communications that they used is they sent a cat video by laser from the satellite back to the Earth to test just how laser communications work. So see, even in satellites, we have cat videos.
Well, this is pretty amazing. My clock says we have 1 minute left. And even though I gave Derek a hard time for talking too much, I'm going to do one more thing and might go over 30 seconds or so. Would you interact with anyone? Every interaction you have, there's only 3 things that can happen. After that interaction, the person you interacted with could leave depressed and less motivated, the same, or you can uplift them to be inspired or motivated to do more in the world. So I hope today's panels uplifted you all from a panel interaction, but I want you to take that into your individual interactions and just think about that tomorrow. Every interaction you have with somebody, see if you can leave them more inspired than when they came into your circle of influence. So with that, I would like to thank the panel members, like to thank the audience. I would like to thank Peter Katz, President and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, for organizing these amazing events, the City of Palo Alto for helping sponsor them, and this amazing facility here at the Center for Performing Arts. I highly encourage you to come here for other productions beside this. It's really amazing place right here in our hometown. So thank you, drive safe, and thank you all.